We have indeed. We've been spoiled this afternoon. The bush has given us everything we could ask for, and you can see we're still with the Nkuhumas, and they are busy finishing off the last of their buffalo. Each one has got a little section, and they're all just having their last little bit. You can hear, listen to the grumbles. Now those are the cubs fighting in the background over the rest of the carcass. So that's them, and all the adult females seem to as though they've got their own little pieces. Isn't that sound amazing? I'm just going to try and get forward so we can actually see what's going on there, so that you can have a look. I think what I'm going to do is just come. Let's try go forward, because I think that's going to be better. And it's because probably the carcass is now getting smaller and smaller, and so there is less and less for them to be able to actually feed on, and so that's when everybody starts to fight. But exactly what I was hoping for has happened. We've got into a situation where all the lions are starting to wake up and actually fight over the carcass. So there's the rest of the buffalo. Now listen to them. Isn't this amazing? And that's the cubs that are making all that noise. It's incredible how such a small little body can project such sound. The female is not being nearly as aggressive as what the young ones are. The only problem with parking where we are now is the smell is quite something. This area, we're downwind from them, and it's quite stinky, that's for sure. Isn't this incredible? We have been thoroughly spoiled this afternoon. Now, I believe a lot of you are very excited to see the Nkuhumas, and indeed, it's been really cool to have been seeing them the last few days, and to see them on a meal and interacting around the carcass is always quite special. Now, for some of you, I know that this is a little bit gory and a little bit sensitive, so if you are prone to feeling a little bit bad for the buffalo, then I suggest maybe now is a good time to look away. But it is, after all, it has been dead for a day or two, and the lions do need to eat, so as hard as it is, we need to be able to see them, and the lions need to be able to find food to sustain themselves and to carry on. And they've done a really good job since yesterday in terms of the amount of food they've eaten. There's not actually very much left of this carcass, and the way they're eating at it now, I'd be surprised if they were actually still here tomorrow morning. The one thing is with all this noise that they're making around this carcass, is that is going to attract the attention of not only hyenas, but it might even attract the attention of some of the Birminghams that might come into the area to try then sort of steal some of this carcass. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens by tomorrow morning, and whether or not they are still sitting here. Well, it seems like everything's calmed down a little bit now. Indeed, so you're all commenting that Saturday has been a resounding success. Sorry, my tongue got a bit swollen there. Resounding success, indeed it has. It's been amazing. We've had the Nkuhumas, Mvula, Tingana, absolutely special. And wouldn't it just be amazing if we bumped into Karula as well, just to complete our Saturday? I know a lot of you are worried about her, so that would be the ultimate way, I think, to end Saturday. It seems like there's another lioness that's coming up on the side here. I wonder if she's going to join. There she goes. You can see the others are moving around quite a bit in the background. Almost like they're a bit restless for some reason. It's probably because there's not too much space around the carcass, and they actually want to come and feed, and so they're probably waiting for the rest to finish. Now, it is getting very dark. The sun has set, and so it's now time for Jamie to start heading back, because we don't want her out in the wilds at night, because otherwise she might end up like this buffalo. So let's get back to her, and so she can say goodnight before she gets herself into trouble. Well, the lions are feasting. They are still fighting with one another, particularly the little cubs. There's lots of moaning and carrying on and growling and hissing and biting and throwing of claws around, so it's still not very polite around the dinner table. The adults are far better. All the females tend to be a lot more relaxed, and they're just winding down this hot day. And you can see the female on the right there, she's breathing quite heavily, just getting rid of all that sort of excess heat, as well as just trying to help with the digestion and get that tummy down. But there we go, listen to the little ones. It's amazing. I love the sound that they make. Something about lions around a carcass is just absolutely incredible. The noises are just out of this world. Sound seems to kind of cut through you, and It's almost very, very, very intimidating. It's nice just to sit and actually listen to these sounds. It's one of those things that, you don't hear that often, so sometimes just to sit and listen. And it's also the best time of day for these sounds, because we're now in that sort of dusk period where the sun has gone down. All the daylight animals are just starting to get sort of comfortable and rest, and the nocturnals haven't quite woken up yet, so it's quite a sort of serene time of the day, not too much noise, and all of a sudden you get these sort of outbreaks of aggression between the cubs and lots of noise. It's quite amazing. It's sort of more amplified because of the quietness around us. And you can see a bit of bonding and a bit of grooming. It's all very, very important. When you've been feeding off a carcass, there's a lot of blood and guts that's all over them, and they need to unfortunately get rid of that to keep their fur in good condition. So you'll find that they'll groom each other, and it's also just a part of keeping the sort of contact between them constant, and so that they know who one another is if there's any sort of separation of the pride. So I see the female was dragging the carcass a little bit, and that's why they had a little meltdown. So the little cubs weren't too impressed with that. Absolutely incredible. What, Steph, you're wondering if the Birminghams would try to kill these cubs or if they're too big? Well, the Birminghams wouldn't try to kill these cubs because they are the Birmingham's cubs. The Birminghams have been around these cubs for many months and have been seen with them multiple times, so the Birminghams would not kill these cubs at all. But if, hypothetically, we got a different coalition of lions that came into this area, so something like, let's say, the Majingalans or the Matimbas, and they moved around here, then you would find, yes, they would try to kill these cubs. These cubs are definitely not big enough to defend themselves. They're not big enough to be mated with, and so those males will kill them to bring the females back into their estrous cycles. It's only when a cub sort of reaches about 2.5 to 3 years old that it starts to become somewhat safe from newer males, but even then sometimes they get killed. It's generally when they reach 3.5 to 4 that they're completely safe. But isn't she beautiful? They're in such good condition at the moment, and after a meal like this they just look so much better. Really, really good to see. And the little cubs, you can see their mange is still a little bit on their elbows, but it has gone away. They look a lot better. Unfortunately, they're at that age where cubs look a little bit raggedy. They tend to go a bit skinny at this age, and they the paws and the ears are still a little bit big, and they look a bit funny. They unfortunately haven't filled out quite as much as they will. So once they reach about sort of 2 years or a year and a half, they start to get a lot more bulky and they look a lot better. It's always a sort of awkward phase of their life. But you can see they've all come together now. Now that it's dark, they're not lying far apart. They're all nicely clumped together. So, Nikki Beth, you're saying, do the lionesses share all this meat, or does the dominant lioness just feed and get the best parts? Well, they all share, but reluctantly. So there's quite a bit of competition, as you can see, around the carcass. So even amongst the cubs, they try and fight for the best parts, and there's no real dominant female. There are older females, and they'll try get in there, but the younger females will also try get in there as well, and there'll be fights that will break out. And it's not just because of who you are means where you get a place on the carcass. Everybody fights for their sort of portion and for their section to be able to feed. So it's quite something around a lion carcass. There's no sort of dominance. The only ones that are able to bully and throw their weight around are the dominant males. So if the Birmingham boys came in here, they would rush in, chase all of these off, and start to feed on their own. They wouldn't really allow too much sort of competition from the females and the cubs. But when it comes to the females, they will fight one another for that sort of place on the carcass. And generally the bigger, stronger female, she ends up getting the best cuts because she's able to dominate physically. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the sort of leader of the group. I've seen females that are the old females that have sort of led the pride for many years, that as they get older they almost recess slightly, and they end up being the ones that get all the sort of scraps rather than the actual choice bits. So it just changes and flows with whoever's in the best physical condition at the time. But you can see now that how there's not too much meat actually left, and so what they're trying to do is actually lick quite a bit. So they go along the bones and they use that rough tongue that is really good for grooming to start licking, and they'll lick all the little pieces of meat off those bones and try and clean them as much as possible. And by this time tomorrow, I'm sure these lions will have abandoned this carcass, and the vultures would have been in, and there will be absolutely nothing left. It'll just be scraps and a few little bits of bone here and there, and if the hyenas get in here, then there will be really nothing. You can see the one female is actually taking a nap on her carcass now, which is a little bit macabre, I would say. So there she is, she's lying on the back end of the carcass. It can't be the best place to sleep. The whole carcass is moving, the cubs are making a noise, so not the best place, I don't think. It is getting quite dark, so we might go into our infrared mode just now so that we can just see how it looks. There we go, you can see that's what it looks like in infrared. Like I say, it is getting a little bit dark, so it's a little bit better when we've got the infrared. It's a much cleaner picture. And also, like I say, we're not affecting the lions in any way by shining lights at them, so it just seems to be a lot more ethically correct to do it this way. Isn't that amazing? It just astounds me, the technology that we have in modern day times, that we're able to do these kind of things. Kenneth, you're wondering if the lionesses would defer the kill to a young male lion. Well, if the young male lion was big enough, possibly, but I can tell you now, any young male lion that thinks about trying to come after these Nkuhumas is better think again, because these 5 lionesses are big, and they will give a young male lion a serious hiding. And the thing is it's not so much about the carcass, it's more about the cubs. They are going to try and protect their cubs as much as possible and try and kind of keep them safe. So if a young male lion came here, there would be a lot of trauma. Now I'm just going to try and just reposition slightly just so we can see a little bit better, and try and just get our way that we have a little bit clearer view of all of the cubs lying around the carcass, as well as some of the adult females that are lying here. So there we go, that's a little bit better. Isn't that amazing? It's like a carpet of lions around this carcass. But yes, any young male that came here would be in for a serious hiding, because these females are not going to be tolerant. They know that a young male lion is a huge threat to their cubs, and really they're not too concerned about the food. They're more concerned about their young ones, and they will be very aggressive to any young male that came. But if there was a group of maybe 3 or 4 young males that were around 4 or 5 years old, they could definitely challenge these females, and it would be a really serious fight, and they might then lose the carcass and probably even some of the cubs if there was enough males around. So they would be very concerned about that. But luckily at the moment in this area there are no young males that we really need to worry about. I know there's the 2 Avaka males that have been seen in the western part of the Sabi Sands, but they, I don't think, would be any match for these 5 girls. I think the 5 girls would really sort them out. We've seen how the Birminghams have had a few run-ins with these girls, and the Birminghams have come off second best once or twice, and they're much larger lions than a younger lion. And so I don't think that any of these youngsters that are around at the moment would want to risk taking on these girls. Isn't it amazing just to listen to them? So, Philo Point, you're wondering what part of the buffalo the lions won't eat. Well, they obviously are restricted by their jaw power, so they're not going to be able to go through some of those ribs, the spine, the leg bones, the skull, and the vertebra going to the neck. So those they won't be able to eat, but otherwise everything else is fair game. You can see they've almost stripped their whole inside. They've eaten most of the innards. You'll find that they'll eat the heart, kidneys, lungs, liver, all of those protein-rich organs, and they'll eat the lining for the stomach, so they'll just shake out the ruminant or the sort of grass that is left in this buffalo's stomach. But other than that, pretty much everything gets eaten. There's very little that is left behind. The lions will consume as much as they can, because ultimately even the organs are rich with nutrients and really are a vital source of food. So it's only really the big bones that they can't get down, and a few little scraps in between those big bones that they leave behind once they've finished. Look at the size of the bellies on these cubs. Absolutely amazing. Cool. Shame, my girl, are you hot? She's panting quite a bit, and you can see she's kind of looking around, and you'll find that the lionesses are going to become a little bit more aware now that we've gotten to this sort of time of the night where it's starting to get dark. They know that things like hyenas are going to be around, and so for them they need to be a little bit more careful with what's going on, and you'll find that they're going to watch very carefully what's happening and make sure that there's no hyenas that come in, especially because of how much noise they're making. Michelle, well, this is a debate that has raged for as long as we've been guiding in these areas. You want to know whether the vehicles will attract other nearby predators. Well, yes, they will if they have their lights on, so with spotlights. Often I've seen hyenas, they will actually follow spotlights around because they know, particularly at night, if a spotlight is in one place, that there generally is something of interest there, and they've learnt that behavior, that we only really follow predators at night, and so they'll actually come in to where that spotlight is and check. Also, if they hear vehicles crashing around the bush for long periods of time, they've learnt that that means generally we're following some sort of predator, and they'll come in and investigate. So yes, the animals have learnt that. So, and that's why this IR is so important for us, and this infrared that we're talking about, and why we are in infrared is because now we have no visible light at all. The car's lights are all off, and so us sitting dead quiet like this means that hyenas are not seeing our light from a distance, or other lions are not seeing our light from a distance and then going to come in. It is all very, very dark around us, and so the lions can feed in peacefully and not have to worry about that, and we don't have to worry about influencing anything that's going on. The thing about this particular sighting is that the lions are making so much noise that they would far outweigh any light or any noise of a vehicle moving, because they would be attracting hyenas on their own accord. But in a sighting, let's say if the lions were all resting, there was no carcass, definitely us having lights and moving around would definitely attract some sort of attention. So that's why we try and be as respectful as possible, particularly at night. We try and make sure that we're not shining lights for too long, and we don't move around too much, especially when the animals are trying to rest. But isn't that spectacular? So like I say, technology like this, that we're able to have these visuals without impacting these animals in any way or attracting any attention to them, really blows my mind. And the fact that we can then broadcast it all over the world is absolutely incredible. So we're really fortunate that we've been able to come across this sort of piece of equipment, and that we're able to bring these kind of images. It just feels much better as a guide to be viewing animals like this rather than with bright lights all over them. Now we're going to sit with these lions probably a little bit longer. I know there are some people that do want to come and see them, especially because there's quite a bit of activity around the carcass. And so while we do that, let's go back to Ali and see where she is and what she's managed to find on her evening patrol.